This is Polymarket Insiders. Today, a very newsy update on a pair of Polymarket crypto markets, for which we're joined once again by the same guest whose tips last week worked out pretty well so far for anyone who followed him into those trades. It's Avi Eisenberg, back to tell us where things go from here. We're glad you're with us, so let's get to it. Well, thank you for joining us again here on Polymarket Insiders live stream. And unless you're catching this on the replay, remember that you can ask any questions you might have for today's guest right there in the YouTube chat window. And if you couldn't make it live, you can always connect with us on Twitter after the fact, where we are Old Bull TV and our DMs are open. Would finally ask you to take 2 seconds to find that subscribe button just below my face. And while you do that, let's reintroduce you to Avi Eisenberg, Polymarket crypto soothsayer. Avi, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk about two markets today. It's actually the same two markets that we talked about when you were on with us just over a week ago. I think it was Wednesday of last week, 13th or the 14th, something like that. And the two markets we looked at then were Iron Finance and EIP 1559. Folks that are involved in those two crypto-related markets on Polymarket know what we're talking about. Those that aren't might just sound like a bunch of gibberish, but why don't you give us the quick recap? We'll start with kind of what the situation was that you were explaining to us last week. Obviously, as I mentioned in the intro, it worked out. Your analysis has thus far proved to be basically correct, but now we're entering into the kind of final few days of trading for each of these markets. So if you can, let's start with Iron Finance. Tell us what the situation was last week. Remind us of what your thesis was, and then how do you see things having changed since then? So obviously been a big move, but sort of bring us up to speed with how you see this unfolding and the price action in the next few days.
Yeah. So when we talked about Iron Finance last week, the TVL was about 1.5 billion. ICE, the rewards token, was about $1.80. And there was obviously an extra 7-8 days until the end of the market. At this point, what happened since then is the TVL dropped a bunch. It went as low as about, I think, 480. And
I think we have that slide there that'll show the current TVL. That's the total value locked, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of the amount of capital that's committed to this project.
Yeah, it went down to like 480, and then the last 2 days or so it went back up to 638. The bulk of that change from 480 back up to 638, a lot of that is from that one account that is believed to be Alameda that I mentioned last time. So when we talked last week, they had about 800 million in TVL. They pulled almost all of it. They were left with like 60 million in TVL, and that's when it was at the low. And then they came back in, and when I checked a few hours ago, they had about 200 million in TVL. So when you're looking at this number, there's 438 million of other people, and there's 200 million of what we believe is Alameda's money.
Gotcha. So if they were to pull again, they would drop below that 500 million. And to remind people too, that's the magic threshold. If TVL is below 500 million on August 1st, that's what this market is capturing, and the shares will pay off if it slips below. So,
and what happened here is that ICE, the rewards token, dropped from $1.80 to about 30 cents. This was the low that I saw it at. And that was also the low for the TVL at 30 cents. Nobody really wanted to have TVL in there because you'd only make about 15% annualized, which, given the fees and the slippage and everything, doesn't really make sense in the current yield farming environment. And then apparently people decided that ICE was going to pump, and so it did pump. Honestly, it's pretty weird. It's very difficult to really understand how crypto pricing moves. Sometimes you just have weird stuff where it literally was at 30 cents 2 days ago, and now it's 55 cents, 57 cents? What does it show? 59. It's hard to know how long a pump like that could last. The one thing we do know is there's still 1 million new ice being created every day that will get sold, or most of that should get sold. So but now there's less time for this to matter. My take on the current market is it all depends on the ice price over the next 5 days or so. We've seen from the last week that when ice is dropping and the yields are dropping, then the TVL can drop pretty dramatically. There's some threshold where Alameda is going to pull, and that threshold seems to be somewhere in the 20% APR range. But then they're clearly willing to go back in if they see the number is over something like 30%.
Got it. And that 20 to 30%, then what does that equate to in terms of, is that just a function of the ice price? You said it's back up over 50 now.
It's a function of both the TVL and the ice price. As the TVL goes up, the APR goes down. And as the ice price goes up, the APR goes up. Because there's a fixed amount of new ice being minted every day that gets distributed equally to everyone that's in the TVL based on how much they have.
So the TVL itself, as it goes down, is kind of a negative feedback loop, right? As the TVL goes down, the APR goes up, which encourages people to put more in, or at least to stop pulling it out. So it's less kind of self-reinforcing. But if I understand properly, the ice price and the TVL are somewhat of a positive feedback loop, right? As one goes down, it tends to push the other one down, which in turn pushes the first one down. So you could get that cascading very quickly, as it did following when you were on before. As you said at the beginning, it was at about 1.5 billion. You were confidently saying it was going to go under 500 million, which at the time was obviously a huge decline that it would have to post 67%. And it did hit that and more. I think it went down 70-some% in the few days thereafter. But as you're pointing out here, you've got a little bit of a recovery in the ice price and a corresponding increase in the TVL, and largely due to that one sort of institutional holder. So what do you think? Again, you outlined for us that it's most likely an continued erosion in the ice price that would, if that happens, lead to this slipping back under the 500 million threshold. But in terms of pricing the Polymarket contract here, it's now at 43 cents, having gotten down as low as, let's see, even just 24 hours ago, it was less than half that. It got as low as 5 cents day before yesterday. What do you think is fair value here now? Is this overdone, this run up back into the mid 40s, or is this really, getting close to the kind of a jump ball that the current pricing is suggesting?
It's very hard to say. My gut is that it's probably a little bit over. I think what the mainline outcome here is that ice sort of slowly declines over the next few days. And if in like 5 days ice is about 30 cents, then there's just not enough yield for everyone that wants to be in there. And I think if ice is under somewhere in the 30, 35 cent, it's less than 30 to 35, then you would see enough people leaving and pulling out the TVL, and you would probably go under. But if there's a sustained pump where it's over 40 cents, then you just might not have the traction to get for everyone to pull by that time.
And again, we're now very nearly 60 cents on ice. So it looks like that would have to basically be chopped in half in the next, how many days do we have for this? About, 10 days, 9 days on expiration here. So, but in any event,
there's somewhat of a delayed reaction where the ice price, the people are not going to pull like literally the minute or even the day that ice drops. In part because
it's a nice opportunity for Polymarket traders then, depending on how quick-fingered other traders are. So if you see that ice price really start to plummet, that's when you might want to go start thinking about getting into no shares, right, on the Polymarket contract.
And vice versa. If ice jumps if you would have seen that ice jump from 40 cents to 50 cents, then you'd get that before the TVL goes up.
Yeah, it looks like the iron finance, the Polymarket contract, the real increase in the price happened about 12 hours ago, was sort of the big run up, and that was after. The ice price gave you enough of a heads up on that you could go make that trade directly without being kind of first into the trade.
Yeah, but it also ICE has been very volatile over the last day or two. It went from
Hmm.
30 back to 50, and then back to dropped a bit to 40, I think. I don't know if it hit 50, and then it definitely went. It
Hmm.
definitely had like a drop from like 45 to 40 before it went back up to 50, to where the 16 where it is now.
Right.
Um, and it's very hard to try to predict very short-term pricing in cryptos like this. I mean, if it was easy, then everybody would be a billionaire from trading cryptos, you know.
Sure. Well, at
So
least you've given us here a little bit of a guide in terms of maybe we don't have to, predict the price if we can simply go and trade in reaction to it. If we see a big spike or a big plummet in that ICE price, and we can
yeah,
get over to this Polymarket contract before the market has a chance to react to it, then
yeah.
even if you can't
I
predict, what it's going to be a week, 10 days from now, you might be able to ride some of these
yeah.
swings if it continues to
The
bop
one
around
thing
as it
to
has the last few days.
understand is there's about 10 million ice supply right now that's available, that's not locked up.
Hmm.
And they're minting a million a day. So if they mint just, if you assume that the market cap is constant, then if they mint another 5 million, then the price goes down 33%, which would be in the 42 range. And it means the APR also goes down 40, that same percent. So like right now, um, the APR is 32% for the main pool.
Hmm.
So if the uh, I,
You
you
said when it gets
right
under
now,
about 20 is when Alameda tends to
well,
pull from the
Alameda is
TVL.
Alameda sort of pulled in like a few different, like they'll pull a bunch at once. They won't.
Hmm.
They went from 800 to 300. They just pulled 500 million in like 10 minutes, and then there was
Oh,
another
wow.
few days, and then they pulled another 100 million, and they pulled another 100 million. But
Wow.
even when besides for them, when the APR was too low, you were seeing something like 40 million in TVL just disappearing a day. So it was like one day was 800 million left, and then the next day was 760, and then the next day was 720. Like in the
Mhm.
Polymarket Discord, people were just like every few minutes, someone was just like posting whenever it would go down by a million. People would just post 761, 760, and it was just
Right.
pretty funny. But you just you could see the pace, and so roughly when the APR is too low, you sort of expect it to go down by 40 million a day. And again, this was based on a much higher TVL, and
Hmm.
in a week ago, which is a completely different environment already.
And that
But
kind of 40 million daily erosion, that's due to speculation that it would be going down, or that's, as you're saying, the kind of dilution of the minting of new coins.
well, that's 40%. That's 40 million. That's going out of TVL. So that's people that are saying,
Hmm.
I no longer want to keep money in here to make 20%. When maybe I
Hmm.
can join a new yield farm that's going to make me 25% or whatever.
Got it.
Um, and that's sort of where
All
the
right.
equilibrium is, where people are pulling out. So because of that, I think that you need ICE to sort of drop roughly like 2-3 days before the market is out, because if
Hmm.
ICE has their big drop on like 2 days before, then maybe you'll get 15-minute leave every day for 2 days, but that wouldn't be enough from the current level. Of course, the current level could also change. So that's
Right.
why I'm sort of focused on, you kind of want to predict where ICE price is going to be in 5 days from now in order to
That's
understand
interesting.
where the
Yeah. So
TVL is
this
going
is
to be
tied
in
to
eight
August
days.
1st. Right. But yeah, maybe you want to be looking at like July
Yeah,
28th, July 29th. If it hasn't managed to recrater
yeah,
by then maybe this kind of, coasts over the line, even if it does tank in the last day or so. I wanna be mindful of the time and switch gears here to the EIP market in a second. Before we do though, do you have any position in this one right now? How are you set up? I know
in
you rode
iron.
you rode those no shares to great success over the course of the last week. Have you adjusted that positioning in light of the recent
Yeah.
price action?
Well, when the market hit 5 cents, I bought a bunch of 5 cents to try
Hmm.
to close out my position. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of liquidity there, and I wasn't able to close out as much as I would have liked there. Um, but right now, I still have a net no position, and I think I'm just going to hold that probably until we see more. I mean,
Right.
if you get another ice pump, if like ice goes to $1 or something, then
Hmm.
yes, it's probably going to do very well.
Right.
If it kind of stays constant, like at this point, if it stays constant, it's very good for yes, because we're over. Um,
Hmm.
no really wants to see like a 10% drop in ice every day for 5 days, and then which is roughly what you'd get if you just, because like we have 10 million supply now. If you get another million minted, that's a 10% more supply, which is a 10% drop in
Yep.
ice if it goes if you assume the market cap stays constant. So it really is basically just a market on whether ICE is going to pump, whether you're going to have people putting more money into ICE specifically and to raise the market cap over.
Yeah. Or at least not withdrawing it significantly, because you put it, they're currently over the threshold. So each day that goes by with just status quo, you'll see that further upward pressure on the yes prices.
Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, I'm sure we could discuss this one for a lot longer. But if you don't mind, let's switch over to EIP. We can always, if we wind up a little bit of time on the back end, come back to this, especially if folks have specific questions on it. But this one here, we also talked a little bit about last week. Explain to people basically what is EIP 1559 and why are we seeing this crazy reversal on July 14th, shortly after your appearance here last week in the price.
Well, what happened was, I've done a lot more research since, and I think other people have done more research. And so, as we discussed last week, this was originally scheduled to launch on August 4th. And then, so the market was just, is it going to launch by August 4th? And there's sort of some ambiguity in some over whether the actual block number is going to actually be mined by August 4th or not. If you look at the average block times, so like how many blocks are produced per hour on average, and it varies a lot. So sometimes you'll get it could be 20% more than the average speed. Sometimes it could be 20% less, or on an hour-to-hour basis. It depends on what time frame you average it over. So it's like over the overall time frame, like a 1% change could be the difference between yes or no, because you have 2 weeks, and so 1% of that.
Avi, did we lose you there? You look a little frozen. I'll give him a minute to come back. I assume that's not just on my end, because I seem to be seeing myself and my monitor still moving around. But Avi might have had a bit of a connection issue there. Again, as a reminder, the price on this, whether this new Ethereum improvement protocol will be implemented by August 5th, has really cratered since last week. It was trading up in the 70s. It's now at about 8 cents. And one of the things I want to ask Avi about, and will, if and when we get it back, is on some of the buying activity today. We've seen huge amount of volume. It looks like we're at about 670,000 today, and I'm not sure what it was at the beginning of the day, but that's been rocketing up. If you follow the Twitter account Polymarket Whales, you would have seen these constant alerts about these huge, 5-figure buys on the yes side, just pouring in minute after minute after minute. So someone, building up a fairly significant position. And let's see if maybe we can pull up one of the slides here. We have the Hancock tweet, and I'm not going to be able to give you as good commentary about this, but this is an Ethereum developer that Avi had pointed out. Hey, it looks like he's back. Avi, I was just pulling up the Hancock tweet. Do you want to walk folks through what this signaled to you and who James Hancock is?
My feed cut out, so I'm not sure at what point that was.
It was about a minute back, but I was just walking through the price activity for about the last day, and then I mentioned that we've seen a lot of, just in the last hour or two, a lot of seeming conviction buying on the yes side of this market. And here's another interesting person talking about the buying that he's doing. So tell us about this, what we're looking at on screen.
Yeah, so the market was like, I think 20 cents last week when we first talked. And then it just went pretty rapidly down to 10 cents and then to like 4 cents. Very briefly hit 2 cents for yes. And then people started buying it up. Before today, I think like yesterday it was, let's say, about 8 cents. So there's been a couple of people that had very strong beliefs that that the block is going to be delayed. I saw one guy that was talking. Apparently there was some bug that was found on the test net that's being fixed, but there was some speculation that would cause a delay. And then, of course, the main reason that people seem to think that it's going to be delayed is that, or that the market is going to be no, is because the block times may be too long in order for the currently scheduled block to actually happen on August 4th. And as I mentioned, and I also had a Twitter thread on this, there's different websites that have different estimators for when it would be. If you want to pull up Etherscan and NiceHash, the two.
Yeah, I
The
think we've
links.
got a couple of those ready here.
Okay, so you can see right now it's saying it'll be 3 hours after midnight. It kind of varies. Sometimes it says it's going to be a few hours before. Sometimes it says a few hours after. Sometimes it says very close. NiceHash is right now that's 11, so that's plus 4 UTC, so that's saying 7 hours after. So you can see there's already a 4-hour difference between NiceHash and Etherscan, and then Etherscan jumps
But
around.
both of them have it taking place after the threshold. Is that right?
Yes.
So that
And
would
so
be, even if
obviously
it's
Node's
not
going to.
delayed, there's some speculation that the block would be delayed, or the implementation block would be delayed. But both
Yes.
these, if either of them is correct, seems to suggest that even if it's not, this is a fairly easy no. Is that consistent with your current read on this market?
Yeah, so I have a no position at this point. A pretty strong no. But to, it seemed like the market was settling on basically somewhere between 5 and 8 cents for no up until today, when there was. So this guy James Hancock tweeted he's putting 2,000 on yes. He's an F developer that apparently specializes in analyzing block times. I saw he had some comments in the Eth Discord about his analysis of the difficulty bomb. But the difficulty bomb is one of the things that I think is one of the strongest reasons for no, because basically every 100,000 blocks, it becomes a little bit more difficult to create a block. And because of that, the average block time should go up. But just saying something is going to go up doesn't tell you exactly when it's going to happen. The way it works is, like, the reason for this bomb is that over time they want to sort of force there to be a fork. So they want it to be eventually to go be really difficult. It's like you get 20-second block times, and then every time they have a fork, they put something that pushes the difficulty bomb off. So it's like, I don't know exactly. They're going to have another bomb soon in a couple of days, but it's hard to know without actually modeling that how much of an effect that's going to have.
But that only is going to further, if anything, further push it back, right? I mean, are there any risks here
Yes.
that would cause a surprise? Yes. I mean, is there any chance that these hundreds of thousands of yes shares just bought in the last couple hours? Is there any chance that someone knows something, or is there anything conceivable to know? In other words, is there a risk to the no shares here that for a surprise early implementation, or shortening the duration of the block mining time?
We have an F developer.
Sorry, I was talking over you. Say again.
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to figure out. We have an F developer this morning that apparently has worked on EIP 1559, according to his Twitter, and seems to have done some research on block times. And like me and the other guys that have been betting on this, we haven't done development work on this. We've just sort of downloaded the block times and did some kind of sort of simplistic analysis, and it appears that the average time is too long to hit. But if you went back to the block times from like several months ago, it's possible. So it's hard to be super precise when you have this source of variance. And regardless of what I think, it's clear that tweet inspired a bunch of copycats, and he put 2,000, and then there's like one other guy that said, okay, I also put 2,000, and you can see this in the price. It's like, not people, they aren't making this up. You actually had tens of thousands of dollars that went on yes since those tweets. One guy seems to have put like over 50,000.
And you think this is just a Hancock effect? And if so, has he given any explanation as to why he thinks, despite the countdown estimators putting it into August 5th, why he thinks that yes is underpriced here?
I don't think he's said anything specific. You just sort of have to assume. Uh, it's hard to know if he knows anything, or if
Yeah.
he's just looking at other
And is
scans
it
saying,
possible that he's full of it on Twitter too? I mean, are you able to see his wallet and confirm that he's got a net yes position here and he's not just fishing for cheaper nose?
well, there definitely are accounts that bought 2,000 worth around that time. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's on the quote at 1,000, 1,500, and there's just on this market there has been a lot of brand new accounts that just joined Polymarket and will dump 1,000 or a few thousand in, which has been really interesting to watch.
And did you take his 2,000 to mean 2,000 shares or $2,000? Because obviously that would be
$2,000.
more
Yeah,
$2,000. So more. So
people,
he'd have what, a 20,000, depending where he got in, maybe even larger position than that in terms of number of shares.
yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. So yeah, hard to know. I mean, it's hard to get super comfortable betting against someone who might have better information. It's also hard, oftentimes to get into to put a significant new position on in the 90s, even when it is short term expiring like this, just because that information asymmetry. It's hard to know. But appreciate you walking us through what the various factors are here, and it certainly sounds like most of the unknowns are just things that could push the implementation time for that block further, past the threshold. So hard to identify what the mystery factor is here that could cause this to flip at the last minute. But and maybe the last minute's not the right assumption either. If this were to suddenly go haywire, when would you expect to see that? In other words, would you expect to see that average block time come down suddenly, or Hancock gives further explanation on why he thinks he's got his full position in. He's happy to sort of, tell the world his reasoning. Or is this the kind of thing that, just as it steadily marches towards August 5th and the estimate continues to be on or after August 5th, that you can just get incrementally comfortable with it, right? In other words, what's the kind of the shape of the timing of that remaining risk? You get more and more comfortable day by day, or is this the kind of thing where the rug could be pulled out from under you in the final hours before expiration?
So the way it works is every day that the pace is below the required pace actually goes up. In other words, if you need to be producing 270 blocks per hour, which is roughly where it was a couple of days ago. It started at 269, now it's like 271. So every day that you have, let's say 269 average blocks per hour, you're gonna have a little bit more deficit. And so now instead of having to hit 271, you're gonna have to hit 271.2, or something like that. So actually, let me check. The last time I ran this, it was 271.19. I don't remember before, but I do remember when I started the market, it was like 269. So it's gotten like a bit like 1% worse since I started analyzing this. So if that number starts going down, if we start actually being above the required pace, and so if block starts speeding up, that's an issue. Every day without that is just less time that Yes has to catch up.
And this is tied. Sorry, technical question here. You can find this in the contract rules, but this is tied to August 5th, midnight going into August 5th, GMT or Eastern time?
It says Eastern time for midnight.
Eastern time. Okay, and so we're currently estimating, these two countdowns are estimating 5.5 or 7 hours after that deadline. Is that about right?
Yeah, so it's actually moved. Can refresh it. This really varies pretty widely,
right?
Because
but this is still
we're getting close at this time range.
Yeah, and we're getting close-ish to expiration, of course, but it is still 2 weeks away. So, exactly, 2 weeks from this morning, and so that difference of what is about 300 hours, and you've got about 5 or 6 hour slippage, or it'll be 5 or 6 hours late if these estimates are correct. So a couple percent, as you said, the closer we get to it without things changing, the required rate it needs to acceleration to catch up, becomes more and more extreme. So I guess, sort of makes more sense to me now in terms of what the pricing is here. Seems relatively rational, right? And it's not non-zero, right? Because who knows? There's sort of an interesting contrarian out there who seems like he should know what he's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ultimately random, but
Mm-hmm.
you just need a lot of different days that are each significantly skewed towards faster times, and
Right.
I don't think you get that many days in a row. But I mean, initially people sold this down to 2 cents, like I said, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's clear that the market is able to sustain a price around 8-9 cents for
Mm-hmm.
now, even as and I mean, presumably the people that sold it all the way down to 2 are saying that, I could have got to much better prices and
Sure. But now,
probably
assuming that this
regretted
plays
that.
out and there's no big surprises, and this slowly bleeds value over the next 2 weeks down to 0 or 1 penny. Any other ways you'd recommend people looking at potentially playing this? Maybe taking a small position opportunistically and selling into these buying frenzies if Hancock tweets something else and gets a bunch more followers to go in, and maybe you scalp a few pennies that way, or do you wait till it maybe the buying frenzy is over and it'll more quickly bleed back down to 2-3 cents and put in a speculative position there? I mean, other than kind of the base case here, which is simply sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that no is very likely correct, and so even at 92 cents, you're happy having a net no position. But would you be entertaining other ways to kind of play the swings here, or play the traders that may be following into the speculation by this potentially informed insider that you could have an upset?
Yeah. So there's 2 other ways to play it. One thing I would know, you can't see it on the chart here, but when one guy just threw a ton of money into Yes this morning, it actually hit 20 cents. And if you were the first one to sell over there, you could have literally bought at 5 cents within the last 6 hours and sold at 20 cents within the last 6 hours. You can't really see it. Maybe you can see it if you do 24 hours on the chart. But I definitely saw it hit 5 cents and I saw it hit 20 cents.
Yeah, they seem to be so fleeting. They're not really showing up even on the hourly chart here.
Yeah, because it didn't, 20 cents did not last for an hour, because when it got to 20 cents, there was tens of thousands of dollars wanting to force it back down to 10.
Yep.
And this is where it's settling. That's one thing is definitely very interesting to look at for swing. If you got another weird buyer that's just dropping. I mean, one guy basically dropped 10,000 and then he did that like another 3 times, another 4 times. Every few minutes he was just spending 10,000 on Yes. It was really interesting to watch. That's you could try to play those swings. The other thing, it is more risky, but you could consider providing liquidity, because clearly this market is I mean, it's going to be dead in 2 weeks, but it's probably not going to die in the next few days. When people thought it was dead, a week ago, and sold it down to 4 cents, and then it clearly was not dead, and that was clearly very premature of them.
Right.
I mean, and people also just running out of money. Like, some people, including myself, have amassed pretty large no positions, and it's
that's a good point.
hard.
The dry powder can run out too as these big in
and I've
focus soon to
definitely
expire
seen
markets swing back and forth.
I've definitely seen that from multiple people, that they're just running and they're no positions are getting too large, and they would love to sell it down to 5 cents, but they just can't. And so if you still have the buying pressure, if you still have people coming in new accounts coming in every few days, spending thousands of dollars, and you don't have enough pressure on the other side, equilibrium could go up. So it is pretty interesting to provide liquidity, because you're definitely going to get significant volume over the next few days. And it's hard to see this going to 0 soon, because unless you actually get a block delay, which is still sort of vaguely possible that they announce that it's pushed off. I don't think it's very likely. But outside of that, I think you're still going to get people buying Yes. I don't know what price it's going to be, but you should be fairly low risk if you provide liquidity and pull it in a few days. And I mean, there's a lot of liquidity in the market. It's 51,000, but you're still getting volume, so you can collect the fees from the people. And if someone buys it up to 20 cents and someone else sells it back down to 10, that's a lot of shift, and that's a lot of fees that you're getting. And and if you go in and out at the same price, you don't actually lose money.
Absolutely.
I
Well,
mean,
there you
should
have
read
it,
up on
folks.
how liquidity
Avi,
works.
sorry,
Yeah.
closing thought there real quick, and then I want
I just want to
take
give
us
a
out, but
warning.
go ahead.
You should read up on how liquidity works. It's so obvious, and there are risks with liquidity if you don't understand how it works. So I just wanted to
Yeah, very
mention
good
that.
point. Is that on the Polymarket website, or is there kind of third-party how-to guides that detail that? Where would you recommend people learn more about providing liquidity on the market?
I'll just read about how automated market makers work, and read about maybe show up in the Discord and ask on the liquidity channel, and people will give you the good links, I think.
Excellent. There you have it. Avi, thanks again for coming back, updating us on these two markets. We'll be watching with great interest. Again, it's the EIP 1559 and Iron Finance V2 TVL markets at polymarket.com. Everyone should follow Avi on Twitter and in the Polymarket Discord. Avi, thanks again for joining us. You at home, thank you for joining us as well. Again, connect with us on Twitter at Old Bull TV. Happy trading, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.